Are you okay, Debbie? Are you taking notes today? I don't know. Not yet. I haven't heard from.
Hi, Sherry.
Did you hear from Kelly?
I have not heard from Kelly. Let me send a text. Yep.
Hi, Tom.
Hello. So I guess we'll just start with the committee members in attendance currently. Okay, and does that, since we have Jason here, we're going to start with his item. So, Jason, you had your housing action plan grant thing that we're looking at.
Yeah, so this is a grant application that call for grant applications that just came out about 2 weeks ago to allow cities to apply for grants to implement items in their housing action plan. We know there's some controversy around some of the items in the housing action plan, but there's also some of the things in the housing action plan that were kind of ideals that we thought would be supported, namely kind of reducing or improving our SEPA implementation process. This would kind of increase our categorical exemption levels, remove SEPA within critical areas because we're already doing a critical area review. Also wanting to streamline our design review process, updating open space and private recreational requirements, looking at reducing infrastructure costs to support housing affordability in general, and missing middle housing, looking at some of our ADU codes and switching how we calculate parking for apartments to do it based on bedrooms versus doing it like we do houses, knowing that studios usually have a different parking demand generation than say a 3-story or a 3-unit apartment building. None of the proposed items would change a permitted use in the R1, change the density in the R1, change the type of housing that's allowed in the R1. These are other elements in the housing action plan that would benefit all type of development in the city, not just housing, but it would benefit housing affordability for all housing types. It would also support some commercial development just as a byproduct. But before we spent the time to prepare the grant application, we wanted to get council's kind of direction to prepare it. We do have to have everything submitted by the middle of October, and it takes about a month to prepare the grant application itself. So it's kind of a quick turnaround. But as I said, those items that we're dealing with, changing of housing types or densities or allowing different types of housing or different densities in the R1 would not be part of this. It would just be those items that are outlined in the memo that were kind of still within our current planning framework, just kind of provide some reduction in cost and regulatory relief for different projects. I can answer any questions, but we're just looking for council guidance on this as we go to prepare this application.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be the ability to go through the workshop too here, or the next workshop or anything? Or? What
we'd want to do is put it on the next city council meeting as a full council item if there's committee support. And that way the council could give us direction. Maybe I can circle back for Councilmember Climbs, but that would give us direction on the 14th and give us about a month to get the application prepared and be able to get it submitted on time.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out so is there going to be the ability to go through a workshop to, I don't want it to get derailed somewhere where you get up to the 9th hour and it get, derailed.
We would have to bring back the full application, and we could target the application to a workshop. But if there's not even support to apply for grant to work on these items, we don't want to spend the next month working on a grant application. So that's why we laid out the memo. And so for Councilmember Climans, what we're asking for is it is under the grouping of the housing action plan, but the items that I was explaining are targeted toward things that would improve the city's code overall, reducing SEPA burden, reducing some costs, but it does not deal with or address those things that were more controversial in the housing action plan with different housing types in the R1, changing densities in the R1, dealing with townhouses in the R1. None of that would be part of this grant application. It's just those things like improving how we do SEPA, improving design review, trying to look at reducing some costs. Only because Councilmember Climas is in the room, one of the classic examples I use is we right now our code says if you're in a critical area, none of the categorical exemptions apply, which means sometimes when homeowners are doing small projects, they end up having to go through the SEPA process kind of as an extra step when they might not need to. And so part of this work is streamlining those types of things, but that's what the grant would pay for, so is to go through and do that complete SEPA code update. And only those items listed in the memo would be in the grant application. None of the other items in the HAP would be included.
So that's where we're at, Kelly, is the page, they've identified those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items that he's talking about? Yeah. Give you a little context there. So yeah, I wanted to just make sure, like you were thinking there, Jason, that, that the council was okay with all of the concepts that you were looking at there, right? So that's
right,
what the purpose of going to council, full council?
Yeah, so the plan would be is to take it to full council for a motion next week, which is just prepare the grant application. And it would just be prepare a grant application for the 6 items listed in the memorandum and no other items. And so these would be the only items that would be in the grant, would be the only things we would be required to do if we were successful in getting the grant. And then the grant application would come back for final authorization to authorize the mayor to sign it, demonstrating that we're only applying for these 6 items or less, depending on when we start breaking down the cost. If we can keep it within the 100,000, we may have to pull 1 or 2 off, but it would not be anything other than these 6.
Yeah, so how do they get to the funding? How does it get to the amount that we're talking about?
Well, we're going to have to look and just do some back of the hand sketches of how much we think it's going to cost for each of the elements.
Yeah.
Staff cost, consultant cost, and just come up with as they would say, an old Kentucky windage number that we use for the grant application. So no way to know if we're on the penny, but we would have ballpark figures.
What's the limit to the application of the grant for monies wise, though?
$100,000.
Okay, yeah. So, it looks like we'd probably be able to, it's not like we could throw in a bunch of these other items that you're talking about anyways, because they would probably put us over the $100,000 cost.
Yeah, my gut check on this is about the max we could do with a $100,000 grant. And it's going to depend on how much we do in-house versus how much we do with consultants, because there's 2 different rates there.
Matching grant, or is this just an outright 100% grant?
It's an no match, 100% grant, and it's based on deliverables. So when we give them the ordinance that says, here it is, they just give us the money that is tied to that work item.
And basically those 6 deliverables is it where you're right?
Yeah. If these would be the 6, if there's one of these 6 that the committee doesn't want to support, I would say let's pull that one off now, and we would just move forward with the other ones. But these would be the items that we were wanting to use this funding source. State grants for planning work are very rare, and I know, as I said, I know the HAP is controversial. I know there's some things in there that are controversial. We've tried to identify those that would not be controversial, but still have a benefit to both the current homeowners and future development, both commercial and residential. So these are kind of our biggest bang for the buck.
It's controversial just because people are under the impression that it's a way to put low-income housing in neighborhoods or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was just, when we had the final hearing on the HAP, there was some concerns voiced on some of the strategies. And because of that, we didn't want to get into the ones dealing with different housing types or densities. We decided to pick other kind of low-hanging fruit that have multiple benefits for multiple property owners and multiple development types.
Yeah. And that number 2, the streamlined design review process piece there, What is a design review level? Is that like at a plat level or something, or?
It's the kind of the planning review that we do for all commercial projects, and it treats a small exterior tenant improvement the same way a whole big new complex would be. So the thought it would be, is there a way to streamline that process so we're not putting all projects through the same type of review, that we can scale that process to be quicker and more efficient for some projects, and only use kind of not full weight, but the full design review process for kind of the bigger, more impactful projects.
Okay, yeah.
And as these are code changes, the code changes would also all go to the city council for approval.
Eventually, it goes through the planning agency and then back to
Yep.
the council.
So I was thinking when I was reading this, is there a roadmap that the state has for these grants that are going to be coming that, that we know of, or that is part of the Puget Sound Regional Council or something? Is there some sort of something that somebody's published that said this is kind of the steps we're getting to? Because this is all part of the Affordable Housing Initiative, right?
It was strategies that were identified coming out of the Housing Action Plan. There isn't a roadmap that says, well, if you get this one grant, then you have to start doing the next things. And we kind of try to explain that in the memo. This is just a grant that's available for work on any of the items identified in your Housing Action Plan. It doesn't pick and say these are a priority or these. Well, I shouldn't say that. Not priority. We'll only fund these, but we won't fund these, and you have to include these, and you can't include these. So it's an open grant for us to identify the projects that we want to work on, and all the projects we have identified are the ones that we identified as the initial projects in the Housing Action Plan. So it's very consistent on that level, and it stays out of those housing density issues that some members of the council voiced a concern with a couple months ago. As I said then, I don't think it's the right time to have those discussions anyway until you start doing your comprehensive plan update. So this targets more of our code level changes that would work inside our current planning framework as it relates to densities and allowed uses. It wouldn't change those or necessitate a change to those. So for example, there's talking about looking at ways to reduce infrastructure costs as it relates to different housing types. That would only be in those instances where those housing types are already allowed. So if you're in the R3, you could build those housing types, or the R2 or the R1. It wouldn't change where those housing types are allowed or the densities under which they are allowed. Those were very distinct and other actionable items, and that's why I included the Housing Action Plan strategies. Those aren't included in this grant application. This is really targeted at those things where we think we can make we can really reduce the regulatory side of the city to help improve the process.
Oh, I love you, Jason. That's awesome. So can you explain the last sentence in the third item to me?
This action will also contemplate expanding the use of transportation latecomers agreements, which would allow a developer to construct roadway improvements that support other future development and potentially receive reimbursement for the cost of constructing a roadway improvement. Is that the sentence you're referring to?
That's item 4. I was talking about item 3. This reduces the long-term cost borne by homeowners of maintaining the small private neighborhood park.
So right now our code requires that when you do a plat, not a short plat, but an actual plat, that you provide 200 and some-ish square feet of recreational space within that plat for recreational purposes, and that it's privately held and privately maintained. So in those plats, when they get turned over from the developer to the homeowners, those small parks become the cost of maintaining them, improving them, and keeping them up fall to the homeowners within the plat. The thought was, if you're sitting right next to, say, Allen York Park or Midtown Park or Viking Park, do we really need you to build another small park, or would it be better to have the developer pay an in lieu fee that would equal what he would have built to improve that neighborhood park because you're in close walking proximity in order to use that park? That's what we mean by the saving the cost on the future homeowners, is these small parks, if they're needed, are great, but if they're not, there's some cost savings to future homeowners, so their HOA wouldn't have to maintain that park space.
Thank you. I was hoping that's what you were trying to say.
Not that it would come up all the time, but it was just one more strategy we could think of.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Jason, how come we've got this the last minute? It was a concern we had from the council for a grant we just went through last month.
The grant award notice that I actually got, everything came out the 3rd or 4th week of August, and this was the first CDC that we could get it on after the notice came out from the Department of Commerce. These grant applications usually have, from the time they give you the notice that they're wanting to do a grant and what the parameters are to submitting, are usually a month and a half to 2 months. So, like I said, yeah, they're always going to be really short time rounds. And so that's why you have 2 of these tonight, because they came out within days of each other. And this was the first CDC meeting that we could get these on to have a discussion with CDC. And that's why we're asking for council action next week, directing us to prepare the application so that we can bring back the application the end of September for final mayor authorization and then submit by the deadline.
So this is a statewide grant
It is a statewide grant, correct?
for those entities that completed the housing action plan thingy we did.
Yeah, you had to have out implementing something from an approved housing action plan.
Yeah.
Is our housing action plan approved?
Yeah.
I mean, we
Yes.
approved.
City
So it
council.
didn't have to be state approved.
No, once the council approved it, it's all done and over with. They've even paid us our last reimbursement request to finance, so we've been fully reimbursed for the project, and they've accepted the HAP that was prepared by the city.
Put us on consent?
No, I'd put it on the full council.
Okay.
Just that way they have the opportunity to know about
Yeah.
it. Right? Next council meeting, is that good, Kelly?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Good.
Does that work for you, Jason? We move it to the next council meeting?
Yeah, as a full council item.
Hmm?
Or CDC.
No, the full council meeting so that you'll get your okie dokie there, you know.
I vote on it all.
Yeah. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
That works for me.
As long as it works for you, we're good. Yay. So we're doing your next one too. Is the item 2 is that TOD thingy-majigger that we've done like 12 times already?
Yeah, so this is a TOD grant application that allows for the implementation of transit-oriented development. This would only focus on downtown. There's currently money in the budget to do a new master plan for what was referred to as the civic campus, based on kind of some discussions that came out of the centers plan update. And things that you can do with this grant are things like do a SEPA planned action ordinance, which means that if you're doing development in downtown, you wouldn't have to go through SEPA, which would be a benefit as we go to redevelop the civic campus if we had all that programmatic EIS work done. And so we can kind of leverage the work that we've already got in the budget with this grant to prepare a new plan for the civic campus, do a programmatic EIS for the downtown, and do that SEPA planned action. So as we go to redevelop downtown, all that work is kind of done up front. It doesn't have to do at the project level. which would just make the properties in downtown more likely to redevelop or remove steps that developers would have to take when they go to develop those properties. It wouldn't expand beyond downtown. It would only be within the downtown center, which is already defined in the new municipal code and the comprehensive plan.
So Jason, how will this help developers know what we have going on to get them to want to develop down here?
So what this one would do is when a development comes in, paired with what we're already doing, one, they wouldn't have to go through SEPA at all because we would have it done for them. And two, it just takes one more thing off the table that they have to do. So for example, we built the regional stormwater pond so people know that when they come in to do stormwater, then how they get to do that without having to build it on their site. This would remove questions regarding traffic studies and SEPA work because we would develop that and say, hey, this is all the improvements that need to be done when downtown builds out. This is how we're going to fund them. This is how we're going to pay for it. So that when projects come in, they wouldn't have to do this on an individual basis because we've already done it for the kind of the area as a whole. And downtown's the only area that would qualify because it's the only area within walking distance of the park and ride station.
Thank you.
And I don't know if we would be successful, but I figured if you don't ask, you don't get to get told no or yes.
Kelly?
Yeah, there's so much on this.
We're going to go through the downtown town later on.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
That's the whole plan we talked
this
about.
triggers a ton of stuff.
Yeah, this would build on the work that's already budgeted. So think of this as like we're already making the cake when we're doing the civic plan update, and that will progress already because that's already funded and in the budget, and there's $150,000 in the budget to identify what to do with that property the city owns and how it relates to the rest of downtown. We've already updated the center's plan as a whole. This was one of the items that was identified as a way of implementing that current plan, which was to do the SEPA planned action ordinance, and it would make the city's property, regardless of what you decide to do with it, more valuable either to the city or whatever option that we choose to do. And by doing them in tandem, we make sure that they're linked so that they're both kind of built on each other.
So Jason, can this be part of the retreat if Deputy Mayor wants to do that next year so all council members know what's going on with downtown? Because most of them are pretty vague what our plans are. We talked about.
Yeah. Correct, Councilmember Watson. There's $150,000 in the budget to update the plan for, Or was it 100? Or was it 125? 100? Okay. So there's $100,000 in the budget to update the plan for the city property in downtown, that civic campus. We're going to do that RFP in January. We just wanted to wait until kind of all the issues around elections got settled before jumping into that effort and spending those dollars. And that would be definitely heavy council involvement in writing the RFP and in working with the consultants on how we do that process.
Good. Thank you.
And this would be a tack on to that work.
Okay. Should we move it on to consent?
I would think so.
Kelly? Okay. Next available council meeting on the consent agenda for this item. And the last one is, of course, yet another professional.
So this won't cost you anything. So this is the professional service agreement for construction services for the Delhi Trail connector, and it's going to use up the remaining
It's all in the budget.
grant. 1,000 grant, 1,000 left.
Money left over.
Well, it shows that we have we actually went over $4.76. I'll make sure it's.
Thank you. Needs to get done.
Any
questions on that?
We'll move this one forward to the next consent agenda.
Consent?
I was just curious about, parametric seems to be like one of our favorites. Is there another favorite that we have?
We have 4 favorites right now, but what I'm doing here is when you hire for 8 hours, out there for 2 hours, you pay him for 8. Using this guy for A, B, 1, and also for the best bang out of our dollars, hours, and pay him for all 8 hours. Paying him for 8. So if I bring 2 favorites out there, I'm paying for 16 hours, right? We don't need to pay guy 16 hours when I only need to. We have the most efficiently.
Parametrics is good with that thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, 8 hours is 8 hours. So. Same thing with KPG. If we have KPG out there, we do the same thing with KPG. Try to use them, have them out for one project, try to get them for a couple. So we fine.
Good. Anything else? So we'll adjourn the meeting.
Open discussion, hold on.
What?
Oh, I thought
Yeah, I
it was
said that's what.
well, yeah, I got one thing.
Tom has.
One thing. So what's going on with the 410 and 214? What's the plan now since we turned down the grant? Do you have any thoughts or?
Well, actually, nothing's happening. So it's just going to sit in limbo until council decides what they applicate. The intersection application is a roundabout. So get that to be changed would have to be something to do.
There has been some discussion to make it like this intersection over here. Is that something that can be in the plan because of the amount of turn lanes over there and so on? Because I think a roundabout's the only way to go, but I'm sure we're having a challenge with the whole council. It might change in January, you know.
I mean, right now we just postponed it a year, right? Have to be.
Just hate to see it be put off for.
Someday.
Well, someday, but you know, it's just.
Yeah.
It's getting worse.
But I think one of the things that's a challenge is that first roundabout we have. Studies show that it will, but until somebody actually sees it, I think comfortable with it. So, but I mean, we're not going to be able to make it a signal. I mean, a signal again. So I don't think DOT is going to be.
What's the also? I struggle with the. Here's where I struggle with. Kind of old, right? And between now and then, we've done like a gazillion years. Got to believe. Thing where I'm really stuck on this whole thing is I was like okay with the roundabout because I understand flow and the average. Come through there. Okay, roundabout, less glancing blows. Okay, I was okay with that. Then what I got where I'm stuck now is we lose control, right? Because once you put that in there, there's no control of you up to the views that flow through there. Where if you have a light, you actually have some ability to tune it. The data that they used was older data, and have we changed the way those controls work through intersections? Have we advanced? Is there a way to manage that processing? Because the estimation methods, right, for kind of change the way we do that in certain areas. So, are there any studies? The question I really wanted to ask was, is there any way for us to go off and find like? There's got to be guys at UW, right, that are getting their PhD in civil engineering that understand traffic management and modern tools. That's what I need convincing you that we're applying modern tools to this and not just saying, look, we're going to roundabouts. My problem with the roundabout is I'm losing my ability to influence. Once I do that, that's my decision, right? Where if I put a traffic light in, if algorithms, somebody, creates the cold fusion for traffic, right? We can do it. And they go, well, darn it, you got roundabouts. So we can't put that traffic control. How do I get past that?
Well, I mean, there's certain things that will always be out of our control. Certain things we can understand. We don't know what the future holds. How things are. So some things just have to change when the future arrive at that future point. Those things are provided to us. But until that time, we have to go with the information that we have available to us. We have to make the decision, okay, I've made the decision, available information I had at that time. And sometime in the future, you can change. I always say that I reserve the right to be smarter today than I was yesterday. So we do get smarter as we go along, and those things may happen. But we don't know. I think right now, this is the information we have available. We have a situation. You can't hold out, but something may happen. What happens if somebody does get hurt in that intersection right now? That we're not going to do it. Last week, I was in that left turn going to the public services building, and a guy goes right through the red light, and he was going a lot faster than 40 miles an hour. Right? I mean, he could easily tag somebody, hurt him bad. So that's not going to happen in a roundabout. But today, well, even with the new code enforcement now that says don't chase these people, right? People are actually speeding more often. But we're actually having people breaking the law because of our current situation. So if you put let's suppose we were able to magically put roundabouts in, everybody's going 25 miles an hour now. Most of 410, a lot slower speeds. They can't go faster because the roundabout won't allow them to go faster.
Right. That was one of the main findings of the study. Right?
Exactly.
That the average flow through the.
This thing all went back to DOT several years ago. DOT went with this. It's a goofy idea, but they came with the idea of like 0 fatalities. That's our goal, 0 fatalities. Well, I mean, I see a goal as something you can meet or achieve. There's no way you're going to achieve 0 fatalities in our highways. Possible, right? People get killed even when they shouldn't get killed, right? Some people, they walk away from accidents, you say that's impossible, but they did. But with that mentality, they want to slow people down so you don't have these T-bones or people hitting people, turning right at an intersection, not looking over their left shoulder. So the roundabouts just are safer in that environment. People are going slower. They can react faster when they're going slower. They stop faster. That's their mentality. That's what DOT is doing statewide. So taking up that baton, but they have done that now. So there are benefits to doing this roundabout in that safety measure. Are you going to get 0 fatalities? No, you're never going to get that. Because there's going to be a drunk guy that comes down, rides right through it, hits somebody. Factors that they solve. But it is a better solution for safety generally. Mm-hmm. That's where we're at now.
I'm convinced about that.
Well, and maybe in 5 years, 10 years, they had come up with a different solution on how they're going to solve these problems. But that's not where we're at.
Well, that's all I wanted them to slow down. That's why I was so advocate about.
The older we get, we want everybody to slow down, right?
Right.
Yeah. When you're young, you want everybody to go faster, right? The older you get, slower.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to do when you get vehicles that can safely? You're going to create new laws.
Rip out the roundabouts because they don't work.
Right.
Well, so
that'll be then.
Well, the ones that auto cruise and all. Well,
I'm just, I was like a proponent, and then I started listening to the arguments, and then I read that paper, and then I kind of look at how what that was really saying. And I just was like, wait a minute. Giving up, the thing that triggered my brain is we're giving up our ability to actually try to control. We're going to come to the laws of.
we connect all those lights on 410, and now we're trying to go away from that. When we got Costco in there, we got all the lights changed over so they're all connected and talk to each other. Anyone starting to stop it, or that one is, I think that one's connecting the group, but there, maybe not.
Yeah, we connected signals from I think 192nd, we went 192nd all the way to 214th, and then right here. Yeah, right. We didn't go across the bridge. We have the condos there. Well, we don't have the condo across the bridge.
And that was the whole point, to make sure they were talking together to keep the flow going properly.
It was the best that they could, right? And back then, Olympic region was still not fought off on the roundabout, so they were. That changed a couple of years. Okay, so DOT has different regions throughout the state. Right? It used to be District 1, 2, 3, 4. Then somebody came in and said, I don't like that because who knows what 3 and 5 are. So we'll have different regions. Then we have the Northwest region and the Olympic region, and we have the Southwest region. They have all these different. I forget how many they have. 6, 7, whatever they are. For the Olympic region.
Cost money
There's so
to
much to
make
learn
a
about
decision.
everything.
Too much, yeah. Too much.
And it's just that my personality.
So right now, though, John, we're kind of in kind of a waiting mode anyways. That's right.
You had a chance to shove it down the throat, but no, you.
Yeah, I know, right? So we'll have to wait and see what, they want to kind of thing, I guess. Unless you
Yeah,
guys,
no, we missed the grant opportunity, so
yeah.
it's we could do a couple things. We could say we're going to move forward with the design. Anyway, that it was, and then hope to get but I think it's better to have the money in hand as you move down that path, because you don't want to not have the $3.5 million to finish the project, right?
Yeah.
Then the design then sits on the shelf. Change, it costs more money to go back and hope. Better just to have the money, say, we're start it.
Definitely have to tackle it first up.
The grant opportunity will again come at this time next year, so you have plenty of notice, but you get a whole year now to think about it. So when we get next time, there'll be no surprises.
Well, they just need to figure out what to do. It'd be really nice. I'd love to see an actual model.
That's something that can be done too, is you can model it with the traffic. So like, even though the traffic data, the traffic counts may have been older, our traffic consultants actually add percentages to that. They know what the growth is because they know all of our development that's going on. So they add those trips into the system. So when you saw those numbers, they may have looked like they're old, but all the back data had been put into that. Numbers you were seeing were the actual numbers that that's intersection. Okay, but they have models that you can actually see traffic coming in, how often it comes in, and it kind of runs through the thing. You actually see a kind of a view of that on news, where they show you like the traffic where it's red, and you see little cars moving. That could be the modeling of the amount of traffic that's on that road at that time.
That'll be
And
fun.
we own that model, right?
Not that model. That model would be something that I think it's kind of some kind of a. We have like the numbers, but I don't think we have like model board. Typically, that's it. There you go. That's that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right now,
the
our
tool.
consultants have that.
Yeah, we don't.
The consultants have it. We just have a report.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if we did buy it,
He may
All
have
you
that
need
skill.
is have somebody
But,
do it
yeah,
for us.
Yeah.
I take it.
but I think the
And
point
then
is,
we could pay the license and upgrade fee.
They do want to do
my
that.
buddy-
that's where they make the real money.
Yeah, we don't want that.
That's where they make the real money.
My guys,
It is important to point out, though, that I know exactly what you're. And it'd be cool to learn more. All for nothing.
I will see.
There is, I wouldn't close the door on a signal there. I would have the opinion that if we had to have, for some odd reason, product put on the ground, that we get that to happen. And I would say that that's just exactly what happened at Costco, right? There's an example where there's an absolute, like, documented from the state level that you will never have a light there. And that somebody walked over to somebody's desk in Olympia and said, oh yeah, they get this. So that happened. So, we could, and I'm not saying it's a good idea or even a good solution, but, I wouldn't say that it's not going to happen. Because clearly we've had some, like, bad things happen. Just somebody knows somebody and mails them a bottle of wine.
Good wine.
A really
Or
good
two.
wine, apparently, or a couple of cases maybe, along with a free membership, and that's always good.
Question
Well,
for,
the
I have a
model,
question
I
for
think,
Ryan.
the model would really be able to show you, and that's the
Yeah,
hard part, is
that would
getting the
be-
public convinced that, that's what it looks like. Here's what it looks like with a signal. You get all this, and then if we put this roundabout down here and we run the same data through that roundabout, here's what your flow looks like, and that's kind of like,
Council
oh,
would need that.
And certainly maybe after the first. It just looks like at least visually.
yeah, because I'd seen they did the same with Lowe's when they were doing the triple left-hand
Yeah.
turn. They did that
Yeah,
model thing.
that's the model.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, oh yeah, I guess we could do that.
Ryan, all right, whoever, John, I understand that Teeter has submitted their application. Chris told me that they've done that. Is that coming forward to us to see it in the near
Application
future?
for. The application for development.
Right.
That, it has been submitted, and actually Jason took a quick look at it.
Wonder where that was at. Trying to.
I didn't quite hear that one.
I understand that Teeter has submitted their application for the property.
Yes, they have. Last week, we received the initial development agreement application request. We will be getting together as staff to begin to review and prepare the draft development agreement. That will then come forward to the city council for further discussion and decision.
Before the first of the year?
I'm very hopeful that it will be before the first of the year.
Cool. Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, now we can adjourn.
Yay!
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.